The notification chimed on my phone just as I was loading my overnight bag into the truck. Thursday evening, 6:47 p.m. I'd been looking forward to this weekend logistics conference in Portland. 3 days away from the mounting tension at home. 3 days to clear my head and figure out what the hell had gone wrong with my marriage. The message was from Lydia, my wife of 12 years. I want a divorce. Only my lawyer will talk to you from now on. Don't contact me directly. I stared at the screen, reading it twice. No emotion, no explanation. Just a cold, corporate dismissal, like she was firing a contractor. My name is Alex Foster. I'm 43 and I run logistics for Pemberton Warehousing here in Millfield, Maine. It's not glamorous work, coordinating truck routes, managing inventory, dealing with drivers who show up 3 hours late with 100 excuses. But it pays well, and I'm good at it. I notice details. I solve problems. And right now, every instinct I'd developed in 20 years of blue-collar work was screaming that something didn't add up. I walked back into our house, our cozy suburban home with the white picket fence and the mortgage I'd been paying for 8 years. Lydia wasn't there. Her car was in the driveway, but she wasn't home. At 6:47 p.m. on a Thursday, she should have been making dinner or reviewing campaigns for her advertising agency job. I called out anyway. Lydia? You here? Silence. I checked my phone's Find My app, a feature we'd set up years ago for convenience. According to the GPS, Lydia was at her office downtown, but her Honda Civic was sitting right outside in our driveway. That's when the pieces started clicking into place, the way they do when you realize a shipment's been mislabeled and you're about to lose a major client. Details I'd been ignoring for months suddenly formed a pattern. The late nights at work that had become routine, the way she'd started putting her phone face down during dinner, the new clothes, the expensive perfume, the sudden interest in girls' nights with her friend Rena. I went upstairs to our bedroom. Lydia's laptop was still open on the dresser, unusual for someone who guarded her privacy like state secrets. The screen showed her email, and right there in the recent messages was a thread with someone named BC. The subject line read, "Tonight at 8?" I clicked it open. The messages were brief but clear. BC, can't wait to see you. Same place? Lydia. Yes, Alex is leaving for Portland. We'll have the whole weekend. BC. Perfect. I've missed you. Lydia. Me too. I sent him the text. It's done. My hands were steady as I scrolled through more messages. Weeks of planning. Weeks of lies. The divorce text hadn't been a sudden decision. It had been choreographed. I grabbed Lydia's gym bag from the closet, the one she'd been carrying everywhere lately. Hidden in the side pocket was a second phone, a cheap prepaid smartphone I'd never seen before. The photos on it made everything crystal clear. Lydia in a restaurant I'd never been to, leaning across the table toward a man with perfectly styled hair and an expensive watch. Lydia in a hotel room, wearing lingerie I'd never seen. Lydia in the passenger seat of a silver BMW, laughing at something the driver had said. The driver was the same man from the restaurant photos. Tall, lean, probably late 30s. The kind of guy who wore cologne that cost more than my work boots and drove cars that cost more than my annual salary. I scrolled through the text messages on the burner phone. Months of conversations. Sexual messages that made my stomach turn. But more importantly, practical messages. Messages about timing, about opportunities, about how to handle Alex when the time came. One message thread from 2 weeks ago caught my attention. Lydia. He's getting suspicious. Asked why I was working so late. BC. Don't worry. Once you file, he'll be out of the picture. My lawyer says we can freeze the accounts, get you temporary support. Lydia. What about the house? BC. We'll get you the house. Guys like Alex never see it coming. Guys like Alex. I sat on the edge of our bed, the bed where we'd made love just 3 weeks ago, where she'd told me she loved me and kissed my forehead before falling asleep, and felt something cold settle in my chest. They thought I was just another blue-collar idiot who'd roll over and take whatever they decided to give me. They thought I'd be too hurt, too confused, too overwhelmed to fight back. They were wrong. I grabbed my laptop and started doing what I do best, gathering information, tracking details, building a complete picture. I pulled up our joint bank accounts, credit card statements, phone records. I logged into our security system and scrolled through weeks of footage from our front door camera. There it was, Tuesday night, 11:30 p.m. Lydia slipping out of our house and walking to the end of the driveway where a silver BMW was waiting. Lights off. I saved the footage. Wednesday afternoon, 2:15 p.m. The same BMW parked across the street. Lydia getting in, kissing the driver before they pulled away. I saved that footage too. By 9 p.m., I had a complete timeline. The affair had been going on for 4 months. The divorce planning had started 6 weeks ago. And tomorrow, while I was supposed to be in Portland, Lydia and her boyfriend were planning to spend the weekend in my house, in my bed, celebrating their successful deception. I picked up my phone and called Mike, my warehouse foreman. Mike Kowalski, 52 years old, ex-Army, the kind of guy who'd give you the shirt off his back, but wouldn't hesitate to break your nose if you crossed him. Alex? Thought you were heading to Portland. Change of plans. Can you cover the conference? I'll pay you overtime for the weekend. Sure, but what's going on? You sound different. Lydia wants a divorce. She's been cheating. Silence on the other end. Then, that bitch. What do you need? Right now? Just someone to cover for me. But Mike, I might need some help this weekend, the kind of help that stays between us. You got it, boss. Whatever you need. I hung up and looked around our bedroom. 12 years of marriage. 12 years of building a life together, making plans, supporting each other through tough times. I'd worked double shifts to pay for her college degree. I'd held her when her father died. I'd believed every lie she'd told me about working late, about needing space, about being tired. But I wasn't angry, not yet. I was something more dangerous than angry. I was methodical. I pulled out my phone and typed a response to Lydia's divorce text. Understood. That was it. One word. Because I did understand, finally. I understood exactly what kind of people I was dealing with, and I understood what I needed to do about it. I grabbed my truck keys and headed for downtown. It was time to get a look at BC. Downtown Millfield at 9 p.m. on a Thursday was mostly empty. A few restaurants still serving late dinners, the movie theater letting out, teenagers hanging around the parking lots with nothing better to do. I parked across from Lydia's building and waited. The Hartwell Agency occupied the 3rd floor of a converted brick building that used to house a textile mill back when Millfield had actual industry. Now it was all trendy offices and overpriced coffee shops, the kind of place where people like Lydia created advertising campaigns for companies that sold products nobody really needed. At 9:23 p.m., I saw them. Lydia emerged from the building's front entrance, laughing at something the man beside her had said. He was exactly what I'd expected from the photos. Tall, well-dressed, the kind of confident posture that came from never having to worry about money. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. They walked to the silver BMW parked in the agency's private lot. He opened the passenger door for her. A gentleman, how thoughtful. She kissed him before getting in, the kind of passionate kiss she used to give me when we were dating. I followed them at a distance, staying 3 cars back. They drove to Chez Laurent, the most expensive restaurant in town. The kind of place that charged $30 for a piece of fish and called it cuisine. I'd taken Lydia there for our 10th anniversary, and she'd complained that the portions were too small. Apparently, the portions were fine when BC was paying. I parked across the street and watched them through the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows. They sat at a corner table, intimate and cozy. Lydia was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, black, low-cut, expensive-looking. Her hair was styled differently, and she was wearing makeup she never bothered with for me anymore. She looked beautiful. She looked happy. She looked like a woman celebrating her freedom. I took photos with my phone, making sure to get clear shots of both their faces. Then I did what any good logistics manager would do. I researched my target. The BMW's license plate ran back to Brent Callahan, age 38, owner of Callahan Properties. I looked him up on social media while sitting in my truck, watching them eat their overpriced dinner. Brent Callahan lived in a lakeside estate worth $2 million. He drove expensive cars, took expensive vacations, and wore expensive watches. His Facebook page was full of photos from charity events and golf tournaments, always with a different woman on his arm. Until 4 months ago. That's when the photos of mystery brunettes started appearing. Always shot from behind or with faces partially obscured. But I recognized Lydia's laugh lines, her posture, the way she touched her hair when she was nervous. I scrolled deeper into his social media history. Brent Callahan was recently divorced. His marriage had ended 8 months ago. His ex-wife, Patricia Callahan, had gotten half of everything in what the local newspaper described as a contentious settlement. Interesting. So Brent had experience with messy divorces. He knew the system, knew how to work the angles. No wonder he'd been coaching Lydia on legal strategy. At 11:15 p.m., they left the restaurant. I followed them to the Millfield Inn, a boutique hotel downtown. They checked in together, Brent signing the register while Lydia hung on his arm like a teenager. I sat in my truck in the hotel parking lot until midnight, taking more photos, documenting everything. Then I drove home to our empty house and started planning. The next morning, I called in sick to work, the first time I'd used a sick day in 3 years. I spent the day doing reconnaissance. I drove past Brent Callahan's real estate office, a gleaming glass building in the new commercial district. I watched him arrive at 9 a.m. in his BMW, wearing another expensive suit, looking like a man who owned the world. I drove past his house, a sprawling modern mansion on Lake Millfield with a circular driveway, manicured lawns, and a boat dock. The kind of place that screamed money and success. Then I drove to my sister Sophie's law office. Sophie Foster Chen was 2 years younger than me and 10 times smarter. She'd put herself through law school while working full-time, built a successful practice specializing in family law, and never let anyone underestimate her because she was a woman. If anyone could help me navigate the legal minefield I was walking into, it was Sophie. "Alex?" She looked up from her desk, surprised. "What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be in Portland?" I sat down across from her and pulled out my phone. "Lydia wants a divorce. She's been cheating for 4 months. I need to know what my options are." Sophie's expression shifted from surprise to concern to anger as I showed her the photos, the messages, the timeline I'd constructed. She listened without interrupting while I laid out everything I'd discovered. "Jesus, Alex. I'm sorry. I know you loved her." "I did. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because they think I'm stupid. They think I'm going to roll over and let them take everything I've worked for." Sophie leaned back in her chair, studying my face. "What do you want to do?" "I want to win, legally, ethically, but completely. I want them to regret underestimating me." "Okay. First things first. We need to protect your assets. Joint accounts, credit cards, anything she has access to. We file first, before she does, and we make sure the narrative is clear from the beginning." "What about the evidence?" "The photos, the messages, the timeline, it's all good. Maine is a no-fault divorce state, so adultery doesn't affect property division, but it can impact alimony. And if we can show she was planning to defraud you or hide assets, that changes things significantly." Sophie pulled out a legal pad and started taking notes. "I'll need copies of everything. Bank records, credit card statements, phone bills, the security footage. We'll file a motion to freeze the joint accounts and get temporary orders in place." "How long will this take?" "If we move fast, we can have papers filed by Monday morning." "But Alex." She looked at me seriously. "This is going to get ugly. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Lydia and Brent at the restaurant, celebrating their successful deception. I thought about the messages on her burner phone, the casual way they'd discussed handling Alex like I was a problem to be solved. They made it ugly when they decided to treat me like an idiot. I'm just going to return the favor. That evening, I drove back to the Millfield Inn. The silver BMW was in the parking lot again. I sat in my truck and waited. At 7:30 p.m., my phone rang. It was Lydia. "Alex? Where are you? I came home and your truck wasn't there." I almost laughed. She was calling from her lover's hotel room, probably lying naked in bed with him, asking where I was, with fake concern in her voice. "I'm around." "Why?" I wanted to make sure you got my message yesterday about the divorce." "I got it. Like I said, understood." "Okay, good. I think this is the right thing for both of us. We've grown apart and—" "Lydia? Yes? Is there anything else you want to tell me? Anything I should know?" Silence on the other end. I could hear her breathing, could imagine her looking at Brent, wondering how much I knew. "No. I think we've said everything we need to say." "All right then. Have a good evening." I hung up and took more photos of the BMW in the hotel parking lot. Then I drove home and spent the weekend preparing for war. By Sunday night, I had copies of everything. Bank records going back 2 years, credit card statements showing expensive dinners and hotel stays I'd never been to, phone records showing hundreds of calls and texts to Brent's number, security footage from our house showing Lydia's late-night departures and afternoon returns. I had a complete financial picture of our marriage and a detailed timeline of her affair. I had photos and documentation that would make it impossible for her to deny what she'd been doing. Most importantly, I had a plan. Monday morning, while Lydia was at work, I drove to the bank and withdrew half of everything in our joint accounts, my legal right as a joint account holder. I opened new accounts in my name only and transferred the money. I canceled all joint credit cards and removed Lydia as an authorized user on my personal cards. By noon, Sophie had filed divorce papers citing irreconcilable differences and adultery, along with a motion for temporary orders and asset protection. At 2 p.m., a process server delivered the papers to Lydia at her office. At 2:47 p.m., my phone started ringing. I didn't answer. The game had begun. Lydia called 17 times between 2:47 p.m. and 6 p.m. on Monday. I didn't answer any of them. She left voicemails that progressed from confused to angry to desperate. "Alex, what the hell is this?" "Call me back." "I can't access our bank accounts." "What did you do?" "This is insane. We need to talk about this like adults." "Please call me back. We can work this out." I was at Murphy's Tavern, a dive bar on the edge of town where the beer was cheap and the conversations were honest. Mike was with me, along with Mrs. Avery, my 73-year-old neighbor who knew more gossip than the town newspaper. "So she's been sneaking around with that real estate boy?" Mrs. Avery shook her head, sipping her whiskey sour. "I knew something was off. Saw that fancy car parked across from your house 3 times last month. Always thought it was suspicious." "You saw Brent's car at my house?" "Silver BMW, right? Pretty boy driving it?" "Oh, yes. I saw him, usually around 2 in the afternoon when you were at work. She'd come out, get in the car, be gone for hours." Mike slammed his beer bottle on the bar. "That's cold, Alex. Using your own house as a meeting spot." "Not anymore." I pulled out my phone and showed them the bank app. Joint accounts are frozen, credit cards are canceled. As of this morning, she's financially cut off. Mrs. Avery cackled. "Good for you. These young women think they can have their cake and eat it too." Time she learned different. At 6:15 p.m., Lydia walked into Murphy's Tavern. She looked frantic, hair disheveled, makeup smeared, still wearing her work clothes but wrinkled like she'd been running her hands through them. She spotted me at the bar and marched over, her heels clicking on the worn wooden floor. "Alex! What the hell do you think you're doing?" The entire bar went quiet. Murphy's wasn't the kind of place where people had loud domestic disputes, and everyone knew everyone else's business anyway. This was better than cable television. I turned on my bar stool to face her, keeping my voice calm. Having a beer with my friends. What does it look like? Don't play dumb. The divorce papers, the bank accounts, the credit cards. What is this? It's called protecting myself. You said you wanted a divorce, so I made sure I wouldn't get screwed in the process. You can't just freeze our accounts. I need access to our money. Our money? I took a sip of my beer. Funny thing about that. I've been looking at our credit card statements. A lot of charges I don't remember making. Expensive restaurants, hotels, lingerie purchases. You want to explain those? Lydia's face went white. She glanced around the bar, suddenly aware that everyone was listening. We should discuss this privately. Why? You didn't have a problem discussing our marriage with your boyfriend, or planning our divorce with him, or sending me that charming text message. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone and opened the photos I'd taken. Silver BMW, license plate Charlie Delta 7921. Registered to Brent Callahan of Callahan Properties. Ring any bells? The color drained from her face completely. That's right, sweetheart. I know about Brent. I know about the hotel rooms, the restaurants, the 4 months of lies. I know about the burner phone and the planning sessions. I know everything. Lydia looked around desperately, like she was searching for an escape route. Alex, please. Can we go home and talk about this? Home? You mean the house you were planning to take in the divorce? The house where you and Brent were going to spend this past weekend celebrating? Sorry, but I don't think so. Mike leaned forward. Lady, you've got some nerve coming in here after what you did. This doesn't concern you, Lydia snapped. Actually, it does. Mrs. Avery spoke up from her seat at the end of the bar. I've been watching you sneak around for months. Saw that boy's car at your house plenty of times. Saw you getting in and out of it like some kind of teenager. Lydia spun around. You were spying on me. Honey, I was sitting on my own front porch. You want privacy? Maybe don't conduct your affairs in broad daylight. The other patrons in the bar started murmuring among themselves. I could see Lydia realizing that this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about her reputation in a small town where everyone knew everyone. Alex, please. I made mistakes, but we can work through this. Mistakes? I stood up, facing her directly. Cheating for 4 months isn't a mistake. Planning a divorce strategy with your boyfriend isn't a mistake. Sending me a cold text message while you were in bed with another man isn't a mistake. Those were choices. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. How was it supposed to happen? You and Brent take the house, I get stuck with the bills, and everyone in town thinks I'm just another sucker who couldn't keep his wife happy? That's exactly what it was. You thought I was too stupid to figure it out. You thought I'd just roll over and take whatever scraps you decided to throw me. Tears started running down her cheeks. I never said you were stupid. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the text messages I'd copied from her burner phone. Quote, guys like Alex never see it coming. That was you, talking to Brent about how easy it would be to blindside me. The bar was dead silent now. Even the jukebox had stopped playing. You want to know what guys like me see, Lydia? We see everything. We notice when our wives start working late every night. We notice when they buy new clothes and hide the receipts. We notice when they start carrying a second phone and putting their regular phone face down during dinner. I stepped closer to her. We notice when they stop kissing us goodbye in the morning. We notice when they stop saying, I love you before bed. We notice when they start treating us like roommates instead of husbands. Alex. We notice when they start planning our destruction with their boyfriends, thinking we're too dumb to protect ourselves. Lydia was crying openly now. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. How far did you mean for it to go? Just the cheating? Or were you planning to stop before you tried to take my house and freeze my assets? I don't know. I wasn't thinking clearly. No, you were thinking very clearly. You were thinking like someone who believed she was smarter than her husband. Someone who thought she could manipulate the situation to get everything she wanted. I sat back down on my bar stool and picked up my beer. The difference is, I actually am smarter than you gave me credit for. And now you're going to find out what that means. What do you want from me? I want you to understand that this isn't a negotiation. You declared war when you sent that text message. You escalated it when you tried to freeze our accounts and take the house. Now, you get to live with the consequences. Alex, please. I'll end it with Brent. We can go to counseling. We can fix this. I looked at her for a long moment. 12 years of marriage, and she was finally being honest with me. Too bad it was too late. You know what the funny thing is, Lydia? If you'd just asked for a divorce like a decent human being, I probably would have given you half of everything and wished you well. But you didn't want half. You wanted it all, and you wanted to make me look like a fool in the process. I finished my beer and stood up. Now you get nothing, and everyone in town knows exactly what kind of person you really are. I walked toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and Lydia? You might want to call Brent. I think he's about to have some problems of his own. As I left Murphy's Tavern, I could hear the conversation starting up again behind me. By tomorrow morning, everyone in Millfield would know the story. Lydia's reputation was finished. But I wasn't done yet, not even close. Tuesday morning, I sat in my truck across from Callahan Properties and watched Brent arrive for work. He looked tense, checking his phone constantly, glancing around like he expected trouble. Good. He should expect trouble. At 10:30 a.m., I walked into his office. The receptionist, a young blonde who probably made more money than most people in Millfield, looked up with a practiced smile. Can I help you? I'd like to speak with Mr. Callahan. It's about a property matter. Do you have an appointment? No, but I think he'll want to see me. Tell him Alex Foster is here. She picked up her phone and spoke quietly. I saw her expression change as she listened to Brent's response. Mr. Callahan will see you now. Conference room 2 down the hall. Brent was waiting for me in a glass-walled conference room that overlooked the town square. He was wearing another expensive suit, but he looked like he hadn't slept much. His perfectly styled hair was slightly disheveled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Mr. Foster, I assume you know why you're here. Actually, I'm not sure you do. I sat down across from him and pulled out my phone. See, I've been doing some research on you, Brent. Can I call you Brent? What do you want? I want to understand something. You're 38 years old, you own a successful business, you drive expensive cars, you live in a mansion. Why do you need to steal another man's wife? I didn't steal anything. Lydia made her own choices. Right. She chose to cheat on her husband with a guy who specializes in seducing married women. Brent's face tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. I scrolled through my phone and showed him a screenshot. Your Facebook page, going back 2 years. Lots of photos with different women. Always married women, based on the wedding rings they're trying to hide. You've got a type, don't you? My personal life is none of your business. It became my business when you made my wife part of it. I leaned forward. Here's what I think happened. You met Lydia at some business event, realized she was unhappy in her marriage, and saw an opportunity. You're good at reading people, figuring out what they want to hear. You probably told her she was too good for her blue-collar husband, right? Brent didn't respond, but I could see I was hitting close to home. You convinced her that she deserved better. Someone with money, status, class. Someone who could appreciate her properly. And then you helped her plan how to get rid of me while maximizing what she could take. Lydia came to me for advice. Lydia came to you because you manipulated her into thinking she needed rescuing, and then you coached her on how to screw me over in the divorce. I pulled out printed copies of the text messages from her burner phone. Want to read your own words? Guys like Alex never see it coming. My lawyer says we can freeze the accounts. We'll get you the house. Brent's face went pale as he recognized the messages. That's right. I have all of it. Every text, every photo, every plan you two made. I know about the hotel rooms, the restaurant dates, the weekend you spent in my house while I was supposed to be in Portland. What do you want? I want you to understand that you picked the wrong guy to mess with. I'm not some clueless husband who's going to disappear quietly. I'm someone who pays attention, who solves problems, who doesn't give up. I stood up and walked to the window overlooking the town square. Nice view from up here. You can see the whole town, can't you? All the people going about their business, all the potential clients walking around down there. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining reality to you. I turned back to face him. This is a small town, Brent. People talk. Word gets around when someone's been sleeping with married women and helping them cheat their husbands. You can't prove anything. I held up my phone. I can prove everything. Photos, messages, timeline, financial records. I can prove you've been conducting an affair with my wife for 4 months. I can prove you helped her plan to defraud me. I can prove you used your knowledge of divorce law to coach her on how to maximize her settlement. Brent sat down heavily. What do you want from me? I want you to stay away from my wife. I want you to stop interfering in my divorce. And I want you to understand that if you cause me any more problems, I'll make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of man you really are. Fine. It's over between Lydia and me anyway. Is it? Because she seemed pretty attached to you last night at Murphy's Tavern. Kept talking about how you two could work things out. She said that? I smiled. She said a lot of things. About how much she loved you, how she was willing to give up everything to be with you, how she thought you were going to marry her once her divorce was final. That wasn't true, but I could see it was having the desired effect. Brent looked like he was going to be sick. Look, Alex, this whole thing got out of hand. I never meant for it to go this far. What did you mean for it to be? Just a casual affair with a married woman? A little fun on the side? Something like that. But Lydia wanted more. She wanted you to rescue her from her boring marriage to her boring husband. She wanted the mansion, the expensive cars, the lifestyle you could provide. I never promised her anything like that. No? Because according to these text messages, you promised her quite a lot. A future together, financial security, a new life. I was making most of this up, but Brent didn't know that. He was panicking, realizing that his casual affair had turned into something much more complicated. I need to end this with Lydia. Good luck with that. She's pretty invested in the idea of being Mrs. Brent Callahan, especially now that she's burned all her bridges with me. I headed for the door, then turned back. Oh, one more thing. Your ex-wife Patricia might be interested to know about your extracurricular activities, especially if it turns out you were cheating on her too. Might affect that divorce settlement you're still paying. You wouldn't? Try me. I left Brent sitting in his conference room, staring out at the town square, probably wondering how his simple affair had turned into such a complicated mess. That afternoon, I drove to Patricia Callahan's house, a modest colonial in the suburbs, nothing like the lakeside mansion Brent had kept in the divorce. I rang the doorbell and waited. Patricia Callahan was an attractive woman in her early 40s with tired eyes and a cautious smile. Can I help you? Mrs. Callahan? My name is Alex Foster. I think we have something in common. What's that? Your ex-husband is sleeping with my wife. Her smile disappeared. You'd better come in. We sat in her living room while I explained the situation. Patricia listened without interrupting, her expression growing angrier with each detail. That son of a bitch, she said when I finished. He swore to me during our divorce that there was no one else. His lawyer made a big deal about how the marriage just didn't work out, no fault on either side. But there was someone else? I suspected it, but I could never prove it. He was always working late, always had business trips, always had excuses. But he was careful, No photos, no evidence I could use. I showed her some of the photos from Lydia's burner phone. He's not being as careful this time. Patricia studied the images. This is definitely him. And this woman, she's not the first. I saw him with someone else about 6 months before our divorce, but she disappeared before I could get any evidence. What would you do if you could prove he was cheating during your marriage? I'd take him back to court. Adultery might not affect property division in Maine, but it sure as hell affects alimony, especially if I could prove he was using marital assets to conduct affairs. I smiled. What if I told you I might be able to help with that? What do you mean? I mean, I have 4 months of evidence showing your ex-husband conducting an affair with a married woman. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, expensive gifts. And I have reason to believe this wasn't his first time. Patricia leaned forward. What would you want in return? I want him to understand that actions have consequences. I want him to realize that he can't just waltz into other people's marriages and destroy them without paying a price. You want revenge. I want justice. There's a difference. Patricia smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. When do we start? By Thursday evening, I had everything in place. Patricia's lawyer was reviewing the evidence I'd provided, preparing to file a motion to modify her divorce settlement. Brent was about to discover that his affair with Lydia was going to cost him a lot more than he'd bargained for. But the best part was still to come. Friday night, I was back at Murphy's Tavern when Lydia walked in. She looked desperate, hair unwashed, wearing the same clothes from 2 days ago, mascara streaked down her cheeks. She'd been calling me non-stop since Tuesday, leaving increasingly frantic voicemails. Alex, please, we need to talk. I didn't look up from my beer. We talked. You said you wanted a divorce. I said understood. What else is there to discuss? Brent broke up with me. Did he now? He said it was too complicated, that he couldn't handle the drama. He said he never promised me anything serious. Mike snorted from his bar stool. Sounds like a real prince. Lydia ignored him, focusing on me. Alex, I made a terrible mistake. I got caught up in something that wasn't real. I thought I wanted something different, but I was wrong. You were wrong about a lot of things. I want to work this out. I want to save our marriage. I finally looked at her. What marriage? You ended our marriage when you started sleeping with Brent. You buried it when you sent me that text message. There's nothing left to save. That's not true. We have 12 years together. We have a history, a life we built. We had those things. Past tense. You threw them away for 4 months with a guy who just dumped you. Tears started flowing again. I know I hurt you. I know I made terrible choices. But I love you, Alex. I've always loved you. You loved the security I provided. You loved having someone to pay the bills while you figured out what you really wanted. But you never loved me enough to be faithful, and you sure as hell never loved me enough to be honest. That's not fair. Fair? I stood up, facing her. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been asking for a divorce before you started cheating. Fair would have been dividing our assets honestly instead of trying to take everything. Fair would have been treating me like a human being instead of an obstacle to overcome. The bar was quiet again, everyone listening to our conversation. Lydia looked around, realizing we had an audience. Can we please go somewhere private? No. You made our business public when you decided to conduct your affair in our small town. You made it public when you planned to humiliate me in divorce court. Now you get to have this conversation in public too. Alex, please. Let me explain something to you, Lydia. I spent 12 years being a good husband. I worked overtime to pay for your college degree. I supported your career when you wanted to change jobs. I held you when your father died. I celebrated your successes and helped you through your failures. I stepped closer to her. I was faithful to you. I was honest with you. I treated you with respect and love, even when you stopped returning either one. I know. I'm not finished. You repaid all of that by lying to me for 4 months. You repaid it by planning to destroy me financially. You repaid it by treating me like I was too stupid to deserve the truth. I never thought you were stupid. Yes, you did. You and Brent both thought I was just another dumb blue-collar guy who wouldn't see it coming. You thought you could manipulate me, use me, and discard me without consequences. I pulled out my phone and showed her the bank app. Zero balance. That's what you have access to now. $0 in checking, $0 in savings, zero credit limit on the cards. You can't do that. I already did it. It's called protecting my assets from someone who was planning to steal them. I wasn't going to steal anything. I just wanted a fair settlement. A fair settlement? I laughed. You wanted the house, half the savings, alimony, and probably my retirement accounts too. What was I supposed to get? The privilege of paying for your new life with Brent. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I have the text messages, remember? I know what you and Brent were planning. Mrs. Avery spoke up from her seat at the bar. Honey, you made your bed. Now you get to lie in it, alone. Lydia spun around. This is none of your business, you old witch. The temperature in the bar dropped about 20 degrees. You don't insult Mrs. Avery in Murphy's Tavern and expect to walk away unscathed. Mike stood up. Lady, you need to watch your mouth. Or what? Or you need to leave, Murphy himself called from behind the bar. We don't tolerate disrespect in here. Lydia looked around the bar, realizing she'd just alienated the last people in town who might have had any sympathy for her. This is ridiculous. Alex, can we please go home and talk about this rationally? Home? I sat back down. You mean the house you were planning to take in the divorce? The house where you were going to live with Brent after you got rid of me? I never said that. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the saved text messages. Quote, once the divorce is final, you can move in with me. It'll be like starting over. That was you, texting Brent 3 weeks ago. The bar erupted in murmurs. Even in a town where everyone knew everyone else's business, this was scandalous. You're taking that out of context. What's the context? You were planning your new life with your boyfriend while you were still married to me. You were using our house as a meeting place for your affair. You were spending our money on hotel rooms and expensive dinners with another man. I made mistakes. Stop calling them mistakes. I slammed my beer bottle on the bar. Mistakes are accidents. Forgetting to pay a bill is a mistake. Leaving your keys in the car is a mistake. Conducting a 4-month affair while planning to financially destroy your husband isn't a mistake. It's a choice. A series of deliberate, calculated choices. Lydia was sobbing now. What do you want me to say? What do you want me to do? I want you to understand that this is over. The marriage is over, the relationship is over, any chance of working things out is over. You killed it when you chose Brent over me. But Brent doesn't want me anymore. And neither do I. The difference is I had 12 years of reasons to want you, and you threw them all away. Brent had 4 months of reasons, and he decided you weren't worth the trouble. I stood up and put money on the bar for my beer. You're 39 years old, Lydia. You've got no husband, no boyfriend, no access to our joint accounts, and no friends left in this town. You've got a job that's probably in jeopardy because everyone knows about your affair, and a reputation that's completely destroyed. I headed for the door, then turned back one last time. That's what happens when you underestimate people. That's what happens when you think you're smarter than everyone else. That's what happens when you try to destroy someone who actually loves you. Alex, wait! But I was already gone. Saturday morning, I was in my workshop behind the house, organizing tools and trying to figure out what to do with the rest of my life, when Sophie called. Alex? You need to see the news. Turn on Channel 8. I went inside and turned on the television. The local news was running a story about Brent Callahan. Prominent local real estate developer Brent Callahan was arrested this morning on charges of fraud and embezzlement. According to police, Callahan allegedly used funds from his real estate company to finance a lavish lifestyle, including expensive gifts and hotel stays for multiple extramarital affairs. I turned up the volume. Investigation began when Callahan's ex-wife provided evidence that he had been using marital assets to conduct affairs during their marriage. The evidence reportedly included financial records, photographs, and text messages spanning several years. The reporter was standing in front of Callahan Properties. In the background, I could see police officers carrying boxes of evidence out of the building. Callahan is being held on $50,000 bail. His real estate license has been suspended pending the outcome of the investigation. I smiled and turned off the television. Patricia Callahan had moved fast. My phone rang. It was Lydia. "Alex, did you see the news? They arrested Brent. I saw it. This is insane. He didn't do anything wrong. He committed fraud, Lydia. He was using company money to pay for his affairs, including his affair with you. That's not... we never used company money. Hotel rooms aren't free, Lydia. Neither are expensive dinners or jewelry or weekend trips. Brent was funding his lifestyle with money that didn't belong to him. But I didn't know. Of course you didn't. You just enjoyed the benefits without asking questions, just like you enjoyed our marriage without being faithful. This is all your fault. You did this. I provided evidence of a crime to the appropriate authorities. What they did with that evidence was their choice. You destroyed him. No, Lydia. Brent destroyed himself when he decided to commit fraud. I just made sure he got caught. I hung up and sat in my living room now since Lydia had moved out and was staying with a friend, and thought about the past week. 7 days ago, I'd been a married man planning a business trip. Now I was single, financially secure, and watching my wife's lover get arrested on the evening news. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was better than the alternative. Sunday evening, I was back at Murphy's Tavern, celebrating with Mike and Mrs. Avery and half the town. Everyone had seen the news about Brent, and everyone knew the story about Lydia. I was being treated like a local hero, the guy who'd stood up to the cheaters and won. To Alex! Mike raised his beer bottle. For proving that nice guys don't always finish last. The bar erupted in cheers and applause. I smiled and waved, but inside I was thinking about Lydia. She'd called me 6 more times since Saturday morning. The voicemails were getting increasingly desperate. Brent was in jail, she'd been fired from her job for conduct unbecoming, and she had nowhere to go. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the text message that started it all. I want a divorce. Only my lawyer will talk to you from now on. Cold, calculated, dismissive. She'd tried to end our marriage like she was firing a contractor. Now she was learning what it felt like to be dismissed. My phone buzzed with another text message. This one was from Lydia. Alex, please. I have nothing left. Nowhere to go. I'm sorry for everything. Please give me another chance. I stared at the message for a long time. 12 years of marriage. 12 years of love, laughter, shared dreams, and mutual support, all destroyed by 4 months of lies and betrayal. I typed back a single word. Understood. Then I put my phone away and ordered another beer. The game was over, and I had won. But winning didn't feel the way I'd expected it to. It felt empty, hollow, like I'd lost something important, even though I'd gotten everything I wanted. I looked around Murphy's Tavern at all the people celebrating my victory, and I realized that this was my life now. No wife, no marriage, no shared future with the woman I'd loved for 12 years. I'd won the war, but I'd lost everything that had made the war worth fighting. Still, as I sat there nursing my beer and listening to my friends congratulate me on my successful revenge, I couldn't bring myself to regret what I'd done. Lydia had made her choices. She'd chosen deception over honesty, betrayal over loyalty, greed over love. She'd chosen to treat me like an enemy instead of a partner. Now she was living with the consequences of those choices, and I was finally free. The end. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.